it was just no big deal for me to come home from school and see like, McGrath and all these guys parked on the side of my house and shit, and going out and finding them in the hills. Or, I remember one year Pastrana came out, there was like this tire double in the back of the hills. And I shit you not, every single day I came home, someone came to my house, some pro racer, and was like, take me to the tire double. I heard about this crazy tire double, and I must have went to this tire double 1,000 times this one season. John and Dana came out and Pastrana, and they're like, take us to that jump. And I remember I took them to that jump. I must have hit it like 4 or 5 times. And then I'm like, all right, see you guys later. And I rode home because I was so burnt out that, here's like Pastrana. He's just like this phenom, and here's Dana of Crusty Demons of Dirt. But it was no big deal for me to go film with those guys or ride with those guys because it happened every single day. And I always look back on that like, what a crazy place I was in, where I was just like, all right, see you guys later. I'm going to go home and do absolutely nothing while you guys are out here filming, making, Crusty 6 or 7, whatever it is. But that was just like, that's all I knew. It was just like tomorrow, another group of guys are going to come out and we're going to go out and film. And, it's just crazy. I always remember that day because of that.
G'day everyone, it's Steve Sommerfeld here, your host for the Riders Lounge podcast, and I'm stoked you've made it back for a brand new episode, or if it's your first time, then I'm even more pumped to reach new fans of action sports. If this is your first time here, you're in for one hell of a treat, as I've managed to get a really in-depth chat with a legend of the sport of freestyle motocross and fellow podcaster Doug Punk Rock Parsons. This episode is brought to you by Rothaus Tannenzäpfler range of beers, the best damn tasting beer you will ever come across. And of course, they're based in Germany, the land which is so synonymous with producing the best tasting beers around the world. And why wouldn't they be? Rothaus themselves have been brewing since 1791. That's a hell of a long time to master your craft and continually produce some awesome ranges of beer, including the Tannenzäpfler and Tannenzäpfler alcohol-free beers. And I can tell you, as I'm producing this episode right now, I'm tasting all that effort that's gone into this 330ml bottle of beer. I also want to thank my personal sponsors who have helped me throughout my riding career. Lakes Networking, where Jason, the boss of it, basically told me to sell my bike and not break any more bones. But since I wasn't going to stop freestyle, he decided it would be best to just make my life as easy as possible by getting me completely set up with all of my computer, IT, and mobile needs to live this awesome life. Also, Custom MX Graphics based out of southeast Queensland, pretty much between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Motorex Oils, DE Pipes, GB Orthopedics, Race Effects, and TCX Boots. If you haven't already, make sure you check out the live streaming I've been doing on the Night of the Jumps Facebook page with brand new content coming out from the new TIMX This Is Motocross mobile game. While we're getting the top 16 riders ready for the new FMX World Championships, I've been casually playing for hours online and live streaming it at the same time. I'm still not sure when I can call myself a pro gamer, but I'm definitely working on it with my new Gold VIP membership and getting to unlock so many trick levels and getting so many bike upgrades so much faster. If you haven't already checked out the gameplay, head over to the Night of the Jumps Facebook page, but I'll also be doing some special gameplay on the Riders Lounge Facebook page as well. So jump on, drop your comments while I'm playing because I can see them all as I'm going through on the game, and there's been plenty of good banter with players and fans from all around the world. Actually, most of the time, I think they're just trying to put me off so I make mistakes while I'm playing, and then they can try and beat me while I'm distracted. So let's get to the main meal of this episode. I was actually listening to a podcast about my next guest on the Racer X marketing podcast, and I learned so much about Doug punk rock Parsons than I had ever known before. When I listened to that podcast, there was actually this feeling that Parsons was this guy who was freaking awesome at freestyle motocross, but he had this entrepreneurial vision to help change the sport, and he just made it happen. Now, I'm not good at freestyle motocross, not that good, but it did resonate with me a hell of a lot with what I've done in the past. I was never going to win any X Games gold medals, but I always had some harebrained schemes to keep myself involved in the sport in other ways so I could always avoid getting a real job. So that's why I wanted to get Doug on this podcast and go deeper into his projects, including the creation of the Ride to the Hills TV series, which I would have watched over and over just countless times. And also, he was actually behind the very first quarter pipe that was ever built. And that's now basically become one of the major draw cards at X Games in the motocross discipline. He was there building the first wall rides. He was writing for ESPN and X Games. He was writing there and writing for the magazines as well. Punk rock has done it all. And he was even a librarian of all things. But I'll leave that for Doug to explain why a little bit later in this podcast. And he has even picked up an Emmy for his work in the huge freestyle motocross documentary film, Unchained. If you haven't already watched Unchained, you can find it on Netflix right now. At least in Europe, I've seen it on there. Hopefully it's on all around the world as well. But there's so much more to the man who retired early from freestyle motocross because of the damn backflip being a huge mental game, and also how punk rock fell into a spiral of drug addiction. Doug is now focused on producing his own podcast series called The Moto X Show, and even though sometimes I stuff up the title, which I did at the start of this, I've really been digging his series, catching up with some big names in the motocross world and all sorts of topics. So make sure you head on over there, pick up some different podcast moto content, and subscribe to get some more from his podcast as well. This episode is a little bit longer than most, but you'll find out exactly why, because the stories just kept getting so much more interesting and at times unbelievable. If I could have had an extra 2 hours, I would have loved to have picked Doug's brain just that little bit more. Either way, no, I'm stoked that you've joined on and wanted to jump in and do a podcast with me. Like I said, I've been listening to a bunch of your podcasts on the Motocross Show, and it's just awesome to hear, like, from your perspective from years and years and years ago, and you've got this background info as well on those riders in the old days. So, no, it's cool. I'm stoked you joined in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You're probably like the first or second person that's asked me to do a podcast, so I'm stoked.
Oh, come on. Surely others want to as well.
I did the Racer X marketing podcast, but other than that, surprisingly, I'm usually the one calling people to do the podcast, so it's cool.
Maybe because it's still kind of new in motocross and freestyle. Maybe that's, I don't know. Like I heard, actually it was my friend in Australia put me onto your podcast with Racer X. He's like, oh, you've got to listen to this. Punk Rock's done this because like we're both huge fans of old school freestyle. He's like, yeah, you got to listen to it. And that was one hell of an insight. You have covered so much stuff in freestyle motocross that I had absolutely no idea about until about a month ago. And then actually, I just listened to your latest podcast with Greg Godfrey, and you kind of in your own podcast spoke a bit more about those things because he almost turned into basically the guy doing the interviewing at one point. He was asking you questions. So that was really cool. But I mean, for the guys listening now, you've done everything. You're involved in a hell of a lot of things. But I wanted to start off with freestyle motocross because that's why we're here. Where did the story start with Doug Punk Rock Parsons?
Well, thanks for the compliments. And it started from growing up out in Reche Canyon. I think I moved out there in 1987. And when I first moved out there, I had a 3-wheeler ATC 70. And I'm not sure what happened to that, but maybe it broke or we sold it. I'm not sure. But there was a brief period where I didn't have anything to ride. And I had these neighbors move in next door to me, and I just remember always borrowing their Fat Cat 80 and going out in the hills and riding. And then, uh,
That's cool.
yeah, eventually my parents got like an air cooled KX60, and that's kind of how it started, like right around 1987. And just growing up, I rode out in the hills for about 3 years before I even knew what a race was. And that's basically where it started. But just growing up out in Reche
Man,
Canyon, just kind of that was like the seeds of, all this freestyle and free riding.
you grew up in basically everybody's dreams in
Right,
an area that would be everyone's dreams. Like,
right.
oh, what I would do if I could live there would be
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And what's crazy is it hasn't really gotten that popular until just recently with guys like Vinny Carbone and those guys going out in the hills building stuff. It was for the longest time Reche Canyon was like really only where like hardcore racer pros went to, like, to either play ride or train. And it was a really long time before, now Reche Canyon is like, it's just everyone knows about it, everyone wants to ride there. But I remember when I first started doing freestyle, I would beg guys like Twitch and everyone to come out and ride, and no one really wanted to come out because, for whatever reason, I don't know if they thought maybe it was going to suck, or maybe it was too gnarly, or just, I don't know. But I know for the longest time it was a pulling teeth to get people to come out. And
Really?
yeah, like,
L-
so it wasn't really that popular, other than the crusty videos and all those taking place. It was kind of hard to get the word out, but now it's completely blown out.
That's so funny because I have known the name for 20 years after watching crusty videos. Like, well, just explain them. Where exactly is Reche Canyon? Like, where are you? Or where
Uh,
is it?
well, it's in an undisclosed location.
Yeah. Okay. So there's the first problem.
Yeah, and you gotta have the password to get in, and
Yeah.
there's 3 gates, and they're all locked. And no, it's in the Inland Empire. I don't want to blow it out too much more, but it's basically it's in the Inland Empire in San
What
Bernardino,
state are we talking?
California.
Okay. So then,
It's
like,
in the prime spot.
I'm trying to put the pieces together here that you said it's in California. All the big boys are in California, the ones that want to go big, but it was still pulling teeth to get them out there. Like, surely
Right.
it can't be that hard.
Well,
Was it just that gnarly?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know what it was. I don't. Back in this time period, like right around 2002, 2003, um, guys were just focused on riding freestyle contests and hitting ramps. So it wasn't really, not that many people were like free riding that much. And I remember I just got really burnt out on riding contests every weekend. And so I was like, I'm going to go back out in the hills. I'm going to do up a bunch of the old jumps. And this was right around the time that, well, I think it was Ride to the Hills. So prior to Ride to the Hills, I started free riding a whole bunch more. And
Yeah.
um, trying to get guys to come out, guys like Matt Byton and Jesse Olson. A bunch of those guys were always down, but it just seemed like for whatever reason it was harder to get like Feist and Deegan and Twitch and all those guys to come out. They eventually did come out and do a lot of riding, but for the longest time I just remember like always calling them like, come out and ride, come out and ride. So
Do you think then, is it because, like, okay, it started with Krusty and then Freestyle Motocross became its own monster, from 2000 to 2006, 8, 10, whatever. They were just so focused on freestyle. Maybe they just like, no, we've got to learn crazy, stupid tricks now. We can't be out there busting ankles and wrists on a snotty jump or something like that. Maybe, I don't know.
yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what it was. Guys were focused on contests. Those are what were paying the bills. And I was kind of already seeing the writing on the wall and stuff. So I was just thinking like, what could I do that I really enjoy? If I'm not gonna
Yeah.
chase the flip, I'm gonna go back to who I am, and that's riding out in the hills and try to figure
Yeah.
out a way to do that. But yeah, I think guys were just they saw it as a more of a risk getting hurt, injured, riding in the hills when they've got these huge contracts to do Gravity Games and X Games, and they're probably just trying to be smart.
I can definitely understand that. I was never that good with natural terrain. Like, I'd play around, but I always kept thinking like, I really don't want to hurt myself out here because I'm probably going to be off for 6 months and there goes a few paychecks. But I think we've kind of skipped forward a little bit here because I was wondering more about your freestyle motocross career. Like, when did you start actually getting into freestyle comps and doing shows? How did that come about?
So I I was a racer for since I think 1990 was when I first started racing. Um, did all the amateur nationals, won a couple championships. I think at World Mini in the intermediate class.
Oh,
Almost won Loretta's in the 250A class. Nick Way and he won the first moto. I won the second. We went into the third moto tied. I got the whole shot, and somewhere mid
whoa.
race, he got by me, and I stuck right behind him, and that was probably like the best I had ever ridden. And so like racing was always like on the forefront. That's what I was gonna do. And then I had a series of three pretty serious injuries in a row right as I was trying to start my supercross career. And in 2001, after the fifth round of supercross, I was like, I'm either going left and staying with racing or I'm going right and I'm going to do freestyle, because I had always done freestyle in the off season. I had ridden
Yeah.
contests, and so I kind of had most of the tricks down. And I did a couple contests and I made like 2 or 3 grand. And I just remember thinking like, dude, this is who I really am. I'm a freestyle guy, because growing up out in the
Yeah.
hills, I've always filmed. I always, like, everyone came to my house and parked. Like, it was that's really who I was. So in 2001, I started riding freestyle motocross, and that it just, the floodgates opened from there. Like, I instantly got on Mark Burnett's tour and I did a whole bunch of shows, and it just seemed like I
Yeah.
always was getting on all the good shows. I qualified for X Games like 7 times. Just that's
Whoa.
you know
Nice.
yeah, so it was that's kind of how it started. Like, my racing career was pretty much done, and I knew that there was no way I was going to make it racing at the point where I was. So freestyle kind of just, it was there, and it was just kind of a natural progression
Yeah.
to switch to that. And that's pretty much, where my road went left instead of right, or right.
Definitely. What would have happened if you went left? What could have happened? Like, you were racing against, or you could have potentially been racing against some of the biggest names that we've known in the last 20 years, and you turned right. What do you think?
Well, I don't think I would have lasted that much longer, because I wasn't really that focused on racing. Having, one year I broke my wrist, and the next year I tore the ligament off my thumb and had surgery, and then the next year I dislocated my other wrist and had pins, and I was out like 6 months. So my confidence was at like an all-time low. My everything
Yeah.
that I had lived for up until that point was pretty much done. And I would have had to have gotten my confidence back to an all-time high. I would have had to be in really good shape, and I would have had to go out there and had some really good races, and probably like worked my way up to a privateer team, and and progress from there. But I mean, it's so tough. As you know, racing is, it's you got to have a ton of support and resources outside of what
Yeah.
internally you have.
Exactly. So at that point, you were still just turning up to the races on your own
Right.
money, and pulling your bike out of the van or out of the back of the truck. Basically, you were pushing for it. You were trying to get that privateer shot, but you were still on your own, basically.
Right. Yeah. In '99, that was my best year racing Supercross. I think my best finish was a seventh. I had a bunch of top tens, and
Yeah.
it was looking good. But um, part of the way through the series, I crashed, and that's when I tore the ligament off my thumb. And I finished the series, But when I got to outdoors, I couldn't hold on, and that's when I went back to the doctor, and he's like, "Oh man, your ligaments hanging off your bone. You need to have it pinned."
Uh,
So it, I had the potential for sure, but it was, I was doing it on my own, and it's pretty tough.
that's crazy. So you had your family support. I guess your mum and dad have been behind you if you as you were racing or coming up as a youngster and always on the bike. What did they think when you decided to say, "No, this is not for me"?
Um, my mom wasn't really, she never really was a part of my racing. Her and my sister rode horses, so they always did their thing, and my dad and I did our thing. And,
Damn
um,
horses. Yep,
yeah,
yep.
and,
Don't
so
mix. Motorbikes and horses just don't mix.
yeah, so, and at this point, like when I turned 16, I started going to the races by myself. And so my dad he would show up at supercrosses and stuff, but I was kind of doing my own program. And, towards this point, I think he was just like letting me do my thing. He was busy with work and stuff. And when started to talk to him a little bit about, making the switch to freestyle, I mean, you got to remember at this point, freestyle had only been a couple years old, and all he had ever known was racing. And it was
Yeah.
really, at this point, the guys that went from racing to freestyle were the guys that couldn't make it racing. So in his mind, it wasn't, he just didn't see it. And even after I showed him a couple of the paychecks that I was making, he didn't, honestly, I don't think he thought anything of it. He just thought it was
Yeah.
something that I found, and in a couple weeks it'll be all gone. And you know,
But at that time, that's absolutely possible. Like, it could have been a storm in a teacup and it could have just finished the next year and that was it. Like, I don't know. I mean, to us, for me, freestyle, of course, was going to be huge, but nobody knew back then.
right?
Still have to have the right support. So maybe
Yeah,
I can understand his thinking behind it, but I guess once you got into freestyle though, and then you really started to get into the comps and all the X Games invites, I'm guessing he came on board then.
yeah. He was. I think, at that point it was so foreign to him that he was just like, just watching it as it went down. And he for sure he supported me, no doubt. And, uh, I just think it was just so different than what was the norm of how you made money riding a dirt bike and stuff. And, once I got, some serious sponsors, and I had done it over and over again. And, and this was also the first time I actually was making a living riding a dirt bike. Prior to this racing, I made
Yeah.
a little bit of money, but for the most part, I'm paying for my entries, I'm paying for my gas, I'm paying for everything. And now I've got guys that are paying me to, fly somewhere and sign autographs. Or,
Yeah.
they take your bikes and they pay for your flights and your hotels, and they give you, a day rate. So it was
Sign me up.
right. Yeah. Like, I saw it. I always knew it was going to be big, and I was just stoked that I was able to still be riding too. So it was, that's kind of where everything was playing out at. And for the most part, he was just stoked to see me still, being able to make it riding.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the X Games then. Like, you've had 7 invites to X Games. Tell us about your best memories from that.
X Games was great. I just remember, the first year, I think at Philly, just showing up. And, you know, I remember watching Carrie Hart do the backflip, on my computer that I don't even think I had DSL at the time, high speed internet. I remember it took 45 minutes for
DSL, man. Back then,
right.
what was DSL? Pah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it took like 45 minutes to load the clip, which was maybe 15 seconds. And I just remember sitting there watching it over and over and over again. And at this time I'm healing from one of my injuries. I'm sitting at home, and I just remember like seeing freestyle at X Games and Gravity Games and thinking like, damn, I want to do that. And so showing up to X Games in Philly was just kind of surreal. I was here I
Yeah.
am, you know, never in a million years did I think I would still be riding a dirt bike, especially at this event that I like held in such high regards as far as coming from Reche Canyon and being, someone that filmed and was doing free riding in the hills from day one. So it was it was cool. The courses were huge, but
Yeah.
it was kind of right up my alley. There were more dirt hits. I remember
What
um,
year are we talking?
this is actually 2001. I think I said 99
Whoa.
maybe, but this is 2001.
Damn. That's a long time ago. I hadn't even started freestyle in 2001. I mean,
Yeah,
I was doing little tricks here and there on the farm on my, I think I had a Suzuki RMX 250, like the Enduro model
right.
Suzuki that they had. That
Yeah,
was the best I could get that I could, well, convince my dad to let me buy to chase cows around. But I was
yeah,
doing heel clickers and Supermans at that stage. Far out. You're already at X Games.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, luckily I had that racing background, and also for 2 years prior to that, I had done some freestyle contests. I did the LXD contest, which was Paul Tabley's series, and I had,
Yeah.
even though I got last or around last place, I still had made some points. So in 2001, when I officially made the switch, I was really fortunate that those points carried over. And
Huh.
so luckily for me, I qualified my first year, and having that racing background behind me coming over, I think it earned me a lot of respect in some regards. So, um, you know, I had that going for me, and that definitely helped me qualify for the X Games. And of course, I had to back then. You could qualify for X Games, so I still put myself in that position to
Yeah.
qualify.
Well, I don't think I've even heard of an X Games qualifier for about 10 or 15 years
Not
because
anymore.
you just got to be part of the big boy club. And if you're not,
Right.
there's almost no chance. Like after that Willie Watts incident, yeah, it's pretty hard to get in. So,
Willie Watts, who's that?
isn't he the one that turned up and did two dead sailors? They went, oh,
Oh,
said
was
he was
he
going to.
supposed to do a front flip or something, maybe, or
I can't
something?
remember what he was going to do. And I'm probably getting even the name wrong. I hope I haven't.
Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, this is like 10 years ago or more.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think
he was supposed to do something that was so gnarly. And man, I guess fear, which everybody has, got the better of him. And it was like this biggest thing. Or they made it into the biggest thing. For
right.
me personally, I was like, fuck, like all these guys are going so nuts. Like, who cares? Like, if one dude's just gone, nope, not today. I don't feel like tasting dirt. Like, is that not the smartest option anyway? But anyway, yeah, there's definitely no qualifiers, that's for sure. So I wish that was a possibility again, like for young guys now to have that shot. And because there's so many guys out there in freestyle motocross that you just don't even know. Like there could be a world champion that we just don't know of, or an X Games champ that no one's heard of.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so how did you get the punk rock nickname? Like that
Um.
must have been in the same time because all I've ever known is Doug Punk Rock Parsons.
Right. Yeah. And I wish I would have never. I hate that nickname. I think we all hate our
No
nick.
way. And
Yeah.
here I am just throwing it out there.
No, no, it's all good. A lot of people, that's what they know me by. But basically, we were in the throes of freestyle motocross, and Metzger was talking one day. We were all talking, and we were like, freestyle was on every ESPN show. All our qualifiers were televised. Like we were in magazines. Like
Yeah.
we were like the sport was popping, and we were like, what can we do to make the sport better? And we were like, well, we need to have WWE characters, and we need to
Oh, really?
yeah, because a lot of people were like, you guys need to have personalities, you need to have characters. And so we were kind of like talking about it at one event. And I remember Cameron Steele used to always call me Sweet Dougie on the mic. And I
Oh, yeah.
absolutely
Awesome.
hated that name.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good one.
And so I remember after this one contest, I rode up to the announcing tower and I went up and I grabbed the mic out of his hand and I was just like, "Sweet Dougie's dead. It's Punk Rock Parsons from now on." And
Really? That was it?
that's how it stuck. But yeah, it was we were just trying to spitball ideas, and I got sick of Cameron calling me Sweet Dougie, and so I threw that one out there and instantly regret it.
Oh, that's so funny. But honestly, it's a name that's stuck. Like,
Right.
I mean, you don't even have to know Doug Parsons. All you even need to hear is just punk rock. You're like, oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if only you had another name then, hey?
Yep. So it's all good.
So, okay, so you're going through, you're riding in the biggest competitions in the world. Everything's looking pretty damn good. I'm guessing you're doing a whole bunch of shows as well, and you're making a living in freestyle motocross. And then I guess everyone starts doing this stupid backflip after Carey Hart completely changed everything. Then
Yep.
what happened?
Well, I think maybe from growing up, always trying to put the front end down. I don't know. I had my theories on what happened, but basically, I never wanted to flip, and I think the what played into it was getting injured those 3 years in a row. My confidence was really never back to what it should have been, and then I started doing freestyle, and I was always kind of just like barely pulling it off confidence wise, and in one of those off seasons when I was racing and I rode a freestyle contest, I went to this event in Phoenix. It was a Pace FMX, which later became IFMA, but
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah,
right,
definitely.
yeah. So I had never really hit a ramp with metal mesh. I had only hit ramps that had wood on the takeoff,
Yeah.
and it was right out of a turn, and I was on a 125, and I had no idea how fast to hit this thing, but I just knew that the other guys on the 125s were like really struggling. So I came out of the turn pinned, and I went up off of it, and I remember pulling to get myself an extra foot or two, and it instantly threw me into being looped out. And when I landed,
Whoa.
yeah, I landed on my back tire, and it skipped back, and I landed on the side of my hip, and I think I like broke my pelvis or my tailbone. I'm not sure, but it was right after I had just gotten my cast off on one of my wrist injuries. So I was I was like it hurt my hip so bad. To this day I have nerve damage from it. And I
Oh
think
shit.
that is what scared me from hitting metal mesh ramps from that point forward. I just always remember hating metal mesh ramps. They always freaked me
Yeah.
out a little bit, and I think it comes from that. So when you compile that with just not having all my confidence there, and then you put me in this situation, it's just the last thing I wanted to do was do a flip and then have to go do it in all these other places, because I knew I could probably get it down at my own place where I practice,
Yeah.
but in all these other countries with all these different ramps, it was just not happening. And I think that's kind of what got me stuck in that rut.
I can completely understand that because, um, as I've mentioned however many times before, like it took me 6 years to even go from the foam pit to dirt because I just had this fear. But then once I finally did it to dirt, then it was a matter of, fuck, I've got to do this again and again. Like this was at Clinton Moore's house the first time. Like, okay, then tomorrow I have to do it again. And you got to wake up and feel good and do it again. And then the next day, and then go home and then come back and then do it again. And then go to somebody else's house and then go
Right.
to your first show and then go to your first competition. And every time you've got to do it again. And I think it was like after 6 months, it still felt like so fucking scary. And I remember I was talking to Sheeny and he's like, oh, yeah, you'll feel like that for probably a good 1 or 2 years. And I was like, oh, all right.
1 or 2
So if it got,
years. Holy shit.
yeah, and if this is the dude that's doing double backflips regularly is
Yeah.
telling me this is just normal for 1 or 2 years, I was like, oh man, this stupid backflip.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I can completely understand, because it's not just doing it the first time and you've got it. You just have to do it whether you like it or not at every event. Or,
Right.
sometimes maybe there's a real reason why you shouldn't do it, but pretty much there's no excuse. Like, once you get there and everyone else is doing it,
Right.
you got
Yeah.
to do it, and it sucks. It really
Right.
does suck.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, I was at the LG Mobile contest. It was usually a really really big contest at the end of the year that we always did, and it was known for being like more of a free ride course. And I remember it must have been 2003. I remember I wasn't flipping, but Nate and Twitch were.
mm,
And in the qualifiers, I busted out some crazy Reche Canyon lines that no one had even saw or thought of. And
that's cool.
yeah, and I qualified first without flipping.
Whoa,
And
nice.
yeah, so it was like just remember at that point, like a lot of people came up to me, like industry people, and they were just like, dude, all you got to do is the flip, and like no one's gonna beat you for as long as you keep progressing with the tricks. And I just remember thinking like, dude, I'm never gonna flip. Like, this is like as good as it's gonna get. And
Oh
it just
man.
that was like, it was just crazy because so many people came up to me. I just always remember people coming up to me telling me like, dude, all you got to do is the flip, like thinking like it's just a matter of
Yeah.
time before I do it, and I'm totally capable of doing it. And they had no clue where I wasn't mentally. Like, that door was slammed shut. And I just remember all these people coming up to me telling me this shit, and I'm like, dude, I don't know. I don't I don't know, man. Like,
Don't know what to tell you. It's not happening.
yeah. So it just that event was like such a like a pivotal moment in like my career, as far as like the right, like all you no one's going to be able to beat you, especially if there's free ride jumps. If there's free ride
Yeah.
jumps, like, dude, you like I don't know, it was just leaps and bounds ahead of where everyone was at that time. Now, I think a lot of people nowadays have came up to that level, because now it's almost like you have to be a free rider first, and then you can be a freestyler. But back then it was just mainly people were just focused on free riding, or I mean freestyle.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
when they threw these free ride type courses in, that's where I really excelled. So um
Yeah.
but
It's crazy. Like, you're talking about 2003, and you'd already shut the door on doing the backflip then.
Well,
I didn't even
I
land my
didn't shut the
first flip.
door. I
No?
hadn't shut the door. Like, I was, uh, I wanted, it wasn't 100% done yet. Like, I don't think I had gotten the foam pit yet, because I went
Okay.
in on the foam pit with Deegan and Feist and
I
Clifford.
Okay, so you chipped in for the foam pit. You were going to go for it.
Well, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I just figured
Okay.
I had the money, and I would just feel it out and see. But I think I jumped into that foam pit maybe 2 or 3 times and then was over it. And I don't know what year this was at this point, but
Yeah.
I just remember um, just praying to God that something would happen where I would get comfortable and overcome that fear. But nothing ever did. And I never really, I would try, I would work on it for maybe, but see, there's like not really working on it. It's either you do it or you don't. And I never
Yeah.
even really went for it. I mean, on mini bikes, I would try it. And for whatever reason, I just never like was into like landing upside
Yeah.
down on my head in the foam pit. And so it just, I don't know. I think at one point I was like, well, I'll try the 360. I have a better chance of doing that because I'm a good
Really?
whipper. And I worked on that for quite some time on the mini bike. But even then I was just like, just grasping at nothing. It was just an
I,
attempt to put it out
it's
there.
this
Like, I was
Yeah.
still into trying it, but it just, I don't know.
It's still the same scenario, because if you get that 360 in the foam pit, then you got to take it to dirt, and then once you've done it on one jump, you got to do it on the next. Like,
Right.
it just
Yeah.
keeps going, hey.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think I was more comfortable with like not going upside down, so spinning. But at that point, no one had really got the 360 um, too dialed in, and I think by this point too, I had created Ride to the Hills, so I was just like, I don't need to do anything. I can do this. I can be an event producer, and I can create these shows and these ideas, and I I made more money while doing Ride to the Hills at this point. So that's in 2004. I kind of had set my sights on doing that, and I stopped writing contests, and I started focusing more on, what ideas do I have that I could create.
Whoa. Okay. So it's not a case of you retired from freestyle and then looked at other options. You already had the other options going.
Right. Yeah. So in 2004, I went to Winter X Games, and I had gotten in as an alternate, and it was on the ride home, like it was like that was a moment where I was like, dude, like if you can't read the writing on the wall now, you're never gonna, so I was at this point where I was like, what can I do to make money while still riding a dirt bike? Like, what do I like to do? And I'm like, well, I'm the free ride guy. I like riding in the hills, because at this point, people would come out and stay with me and go riding in the hills, but like I was going out in Richie fixing up all my old jumps. I was, the freeway jump in Calamasa, I went back and fixed that up and had Garth come out and shoot it, and I was like really putting free riding on the map, you know, from for myself. And I'm sure there were other guys out there and stuff, but I just remember always going out to Richie, going to all my old jumps and building everything. And on the ride home from Winter X, Jay Schweitzer was with me, and he had just
Yeah.
finished up his last video, and he was like looking for his next thing to do. And I remember telling him, like, look, I got this idea. I know Blue Torch tried to do a free ride tour and it kind of worked, but I'm like, here's what I think they did wrong. And I gave him this idea, like, look, let's create an event. I'll build the course, I'll create the format, I'll do all the writing side, and you handle all the filming and TV side. And basically, I came up with this concept, like, instead of having 90-second runs, let's create 5 jumps. Each jump is a stage. We have one designated filmer who films each jump. We use his footage only to judge. At the end of the day, the writers judge. You can't
Ah,
vote for yourself. And we'll get sponsors for each stage, so that way we can pay for the event. So each stage, each jump was like the Moto Triple X jump, or the, whatever.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
So that was basically like the concept. And we went, and I had ridden out at Jackpot's ranch, and I'm like, dude, it'd be sick if we could do it out there, these nice plush green rolling hills. And
Perfect location.
right, yeah. And so we got a bunch of the guys that come out. Basically, I told them, I'm like, look, we don't have any money this time around, but if we can sell the show for next year, I'll pay you guys double to make up for riding
Hey,
for
that's
free.
that's a good deal.
Right. Yeah. So when we got Red Bull the next year, we made sure that we took
Nice.
everyone out. Yeah, and we did a 3-year deal with them after that first year. But that first year, we got the money together from sponsors. We cut a half-hour TV show, and Fuel TV bought it, and we were off to the races.
Man, that is awesome. Like I remember those Ride to the Hills, and that was the pretty much the coolest thing I'd seen as a
Yeah. Thank
competition.
you. I,
Like
I
it
thought
was
I thought so
fucking
too.
unbelievable. No, the funny thing is, like, as you're talking, like, I'm just sitting here just thinking how kind of like along the same lines I've kind of headed. Like, I was never the best freestyle rider. I've never had dreams of becoming the best because I just I just don't want to crash any more than I have already, and I've already crashed a lot, and I'm not willing to risk it. Like, I don't want to go do double flips, or triple flips is probably what's next, and
Right.
everything like that.
You see
And
Harry do the triple flip in the foam pit?
oh man, exactly. Like come on, I'm yeah, that's for kids. That's for the young guys. Like,
Yeah.
and I've always been fairly timid on um, going outside of my comfort zone. Like, I work on my tricks slowly, and I do everything slowly until they're perfect and until I'm happy with it. But I was never one to just go and huck it knowing there's like 50-50 or worse chance of crashing. Like, I was just
Right.
never one of those guys. And so I kind of went in, like, this is back in 2009, I think. A good friend of mine, Ryan White, he's a musician, and like we both came from a small country town. We moved to the big city, and he was like, "What are you going to do when you finish freestyle motocross?" And I'm like, "Go back and get a real job." And he's like, "Yeah, you're not going to do that. Like, we both know you don't want to do a real job, and I don't." So, and he's like, "Well, why don't you just do something else? Like, just start now while you're riding." And yeah, so I started managing guys. So I was managing Sheeny and Clinton at the time, which was really cool. Um, but then, like, this is only, I'm skipping a long way forward now to just after, like, I had a big crash in 2017. And while I was on the couch, my wife was doing a scripting job for a TV channel, and it was the free ride snowboard series where they just drop people out of a helicopter at the top of a mountain, and they just have to get to the bottom. And they've got all different guys from all different disciplines, and they've all got their own way to get down the hill and all different places to get down the hill. And Rachel's like, "We have to bring this back to freestyle motocross." I'm like, "Yeah, there's the New Zealand Farm Jam, and I've ridden that 3 or 4 times, and that was the best competition I think I've ever done, like, for fun. Like, nobody cared if they won or lost or whatever. Like, you just pumped to be there. And same thing, riders judge, can't judge for yourself, and that was it. And then I just sat there, and I was just laying on the couch for 2 months, with my leg in a machine, just going up and down 12 hours a day. That's all I did. And so I was just watching videos and just thinking, like, if this is the end of my freestyle career, like, okay, it is what it is. But what would I have wanted to have done? Like, what would be so much better? And I just kept thinking back to this free ride. So I started coming up with the idea, like, let's start to go back into free ride competitions. Like, freestyle's going completely one direction, and we've lost the free ride now. And basically, I was talking to the bosses at Night of the Jumps, because I was judging, and I was their commentator and stuff at some of the events, or most of the events, for the last few years, and just told them the idea of doing a free ride tour. And I was showing them your videos. Like, I'm like, "Here's Ride to the Hills. This is what they did 15 years ago, or older, longer." And I'm like, it worked then, and it has to work even better now. And yeah, it just kind of came at the right time. So basically, I was showing your videos to them,
Nice.
and that's how we ended up with Red Bull Dirt Diggers last year in Germany, because it's a German company that I'm working for. Like, I'm over here living with them, living in Germany. And yeah, that was basically the start. So your
Nice.
series was a fairly critical part of me just showing what can be done. Like, of course, I can put a whole bunch of videos together, but I didn't need to. You'd already done it. So, no,
Nice.
thank you very much. You made my life so much easier.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome to hear, man. Yeah, there was a, that's not the first time I've heard that. I know, Robbie Madison, I think, put something together in Australia that was,
Yeah,
free
Red Bull
ride ish.
X-Ray.
Yeah, and
Yep.
so Paul Tabley did the Riot, which was I
Yeah.
think Tess put that format together, but they basically used my format to the T, and they created, I think the HD network was trying to put money into creating content, and they went out and did I think they call it the HD Riot or the Rush or something. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, I
it's
remember that.
yeah, you know, it's uh, I think whatever that saying is, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. You know,
Exactly. Exactly.
a lot of people are like, dude, can you believe that they stole your? I'm like, nah, dude. You know how many people told me I was crazy, that this would never work, and then here those same exact people went out and did that, and the ultimate for me with creating Ride to the Hills, it was a few different things. It was one, I wanted to create a series for the guys that didn't want to flip, to make money and take the contract to their sponsors and be like, look, I'm riding this, the Ride to the Hills series. It's televised, you know, and do their sponsorship deals in a way to like still continue to ride. So that was one part of it. Another part of it
Yeah,
was I
exactly.
wanted to get it into X Games. That would have been like
Whoa.
the ultimate goal, and that's what.
That would have been unreal.
Right. So that's why I was talking to Paul Tabley about it. And that's when he told me like, oh no, it'll never happen. And then that summer he went out and did the HD series, which, I don't care. It's fine. Like
Yeah.
I was just stoked, like at that point for people to be like, taking doing something that I had just done was, it was like, it was credit to me.
Absolutely.
So
Like, to be
yeah,
honest, I didn't even know you were behind it. I didn't even know until I listened to that Racer X podcast about 2 or 3 months ago. And I was like, huh, okay, that was, I'm going to say it again, that was punk rock.
yeah. So
That's so gnarly
yeah,
because, like, I judged actually at the second Red Bull X-Ray event that Robbie Madison had on in Sydney. Um, I don't even know how I ended up judging at that. I don't know why. I went down with Matt Schubring. I don't know if you remember him.
yeah.
So I was down there with Shuey, and I remember like obviously Matto must have come up with the whole judging, or somebody, whoever came up with the judging. I don't know who came up with it. But in the end, basically out of the three judges, mine had the most weight, like by something like 80% of the weight of all the judging. And I don't know why. And so at that comp, I was like, man, Tucker killed it. So on my score sheet, I'm like, yeah, Tucker wins. Oh, that was bad. Oh, Matto was pissed. He lost his own event and I judged him away from it, and Tucker killed it. But to be honest, they both killed it. They both rode so damn good, and it could have easily gone both ways. And then, of course, I was the bad judge at that free ride event. But,
Yeah.
it was, but it's still, he put on such a massive thing. I think there was like 13,000 people, and it was
No
only
way.
45 minutes away from Sydney, and it was awesome. Shuey knocked his front tooth out. He looked pretty
Oh shit.
awesome. He went just like, of all the massive jumps, he went to do this little seat grab Indy over, like this little setup jump, missed his grab or something like that, and just smashed his tooth on his bar pad.
Dang.
But yeah, like that event was so awesome. And you've got Tucker coming out from America. You've got all the racers there doing speed and style just for something on the side. So the racers were keeping their sponsors happy. And then over, like I said, over in New Zealand, the Frew brothers, they had the New Zealand Farm Jam, and it just started out, I think, with one event per year. And I think it's one event every 2 years now because they've all got families and there's just not enough time to do it.
Right. Yeah.
But that feeling of an event, like, it's just, you can't compare it to any freestyle motocross competition. And like last year, like I said, we proved everyone right. That, like, I'm glad the right people kind of listened to me at just the right time. Like, maybe if I gave, or put the idea out there 6 months earlier or 6 months later, it probably wouldn't happen. So it was just kind of the right time. And yeah, no, I'm definitely pumped that the bosses from Night of the Jumps thought it was a good idea. They went to Red Bull, they thought it was a good idea, and it somehow happened. And then, the plan is, let's go into the future with a full series of it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
and
cool.
it
Yeah.
all comes back from back in those days.
Yeah. Something to say about Matto too was he did my quarter pipe event, and he was man, I can't thank those guys enough for coming out and doing that, because this was another event that was like no one had ever really done this before, and it was something that, this year at X Games, must have been '06 or '05, I can't remember, but it was the first year they had the mega ramp. And
Oh yeah,
I remember
yeah.
we were all standing there watching practice, and I was like, a bunch of us were like, dude, we could hit that on a dirt bike right now. You see that takeoff? And I remember looking at that thing and being like, dude, I got to make a quarter pipe. And as soon as I got home the next week from X Games, I called Dane Heron, who was the Red Bull team manager, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to build a quarter pipe. Do you want to throw in on this? Because at this time, I kind of had a pretty good
Oh,
relationship with him and Red Bull. And he's like, I'll give you 10 grand. And I called Adam Barker, who was doing the M80 TV series. And I'm like,
yeah.
dude, let's do a quarter pipe episode. We'll create a little contest. You can film it for your show. Red Bull Dane's going to give me 10 grand to build it, and we'll make it happen. And so I called my buddy Tommy, who had the property, and we went and we chunked out a side, cut out. He had this awesome hillside that he had just manicured and graded for his house, and he had a supercross track down below, and we just chunked the side of this hill out and built our quarter pipe. And that's pretty much how it started. And I remember Matto had came, and I just can't thank those guys enough for coming out, because I'm not sure if they got paid or how much. I think one of the years, because we did it 2 times, I think we paid in the
Yeah.
second, but it was um it was rough, because I remember Drake crashing, and it was so gnarly. Like, people that have never hit a quarter pipe, it is so gnarly. And I remember a couple of the guys crashing, and I was just like, man, this thing's too gnarly. I don't, like sometimes when I build these events, I'm like, or building jumps in the hills, I'm like, I don't know, is this gonna work? And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And I just remember all these guys coming out doing the quarter pipe, and I was just, looking back on it now, I'm extremely grateful for them for coming out, because you would never get any of those top guys to come out like they did back then. I think even Jeremy came out, and you know,
Whoa.
so it means a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Like, and was that the first quarter pipe for freestyle?
yeah. No one had
Whoa,
ever done it
okay.
before. Yeah, so that was
Is that
another thing that I was
it,
trying to do was, 3 to 5 events throughout the year, and the quarter pipe was one of them. I created a speed and style event before there was speed and style, and that was called
really?
Park FMX, and we did that out at Fitz's house, and that was also for
Huh.
fuel. But yeah, that was all. These were kind of part of my bigger picture idea.
Whoa. All these like this is what's crazy. Like I honestly I just had no idea that you had this part in all of these things that were going on back then. Is
Yeah,
is is it me? Like am I thinking of the right thing? But there's like this iconic kind of photo of Mike Metzger airing out a quarter pipe. I think he might have been doing a double can as well. Was that the same event?
it could be. He did the first year, I want to say. I think he did the first year. So,
I'll have to
maybe.
try and dig up that photo.
Yeah.
I'm fairly sure that that's the same one that you're talking about. If
Yeah.
it's not, but I'm pretty sure it is because
Yeah.
I remember something about quarter pipes and then just seeing Mike Metzger and I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
it looks like we've got something else to jump now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, like, all this stemmed from not doing the flip. Like, so 2004 to this point, like, my whole mission was to just create events and get them into the program, so guys that didn't want to flip still had a place to make a living riding dirt bikes. And if I
Yeah.
could help change the sport, or put, if I'm not going to flip, then I need to at least be doing something to contribute to the sport. If I want to have my place in it, that I felt like I needed to bring something else to the table. And that what's cool about the quarter pipe now is it's like the main staple event at X Games.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
it's
Like
pretty cool.
I mean, the quarter pipe's not really for me. I didn't
Yeah.
really enjoy it that much. But basically what you're saying is you're building events for me. If if they were still going and they were the main thing, like up until 2012, I wouldn't have bothered flipping to dirt. Like I had to flip because I had to flip. If I wanted to keep riding a motorbike for a living and not having kids hang over the fence at shows going, do a flip. And
Yeah.
me getting sooky about it because I can't.
Yeah.
Like if your events just kept going, I would have been so damn happy. Oh,
Yeah.
you would have saved me so much stress. Like I wouldn't be so grey as I am now.
Yeah.
Were you also involved in the wall ride? Like,
Right. Yeah.
was that
So,
something you do?
yep, that was another thing that I did. Jesse Olsen was actually the first person. Like we literally were doing it
Oh,
at the same exact time,
yeah.
but I went on a film trip, and one of our stops was at his house, and that's when I saw his wall ride. But literally, at that same exact time, I was building a wall ride back at home, and so I kind of have to give him credit for it because that's really the truth. But I built my wall ride was twice my wall. It was huge. It was like 3 times as big as his. So I just say
Oh,
I built the first mega wall ride. But
yeah.
that year in X Games they put the quarter pipe and the wall ride in, and that was just like another confirmation to me. Like,
Yeah, you had the
um,
right idea.
right, yeah, I had the right idea. So, it was pretty cool. I don't know if the wall rides are still in X Games. I don't think so, but yeah, it was pretty
No,
cool.
I think it's been a long time since they've had a wall ride there.
Yeah,
I know like X Fighters put it in a fair few times, which is
right.
cool. I think if it's almost like everything now, like it just has to be bigger to be, you know, to be there, and the guys have to want to go big into the wall ride. Otherwise, it's kind of,
Right. Well,
we've been there and done that in a way, and unfortunately, that's freestyle motocross. I think, like,
yeah. Well, I can tell you where the wall ride's gonna go. It's
oh,
um like I think it's Tom Parsons. Um he's
oh,
built something where like they have a lip off the wall ride, and from day one
what?
I had always said that um you could do stuff off the wall ride. You just have to build it a certain way. And I want to say he's got something where he's like riding off the corner of the wall ride to a landing. And
No way.
yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think I saw.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I mean that's the next step for the wall ride, and I don't know why it's taking this long, but um, there's still a place for it. That's for sure.
Man, that's cool. It sounds like you back then is kind of like the Tom Pages of now. Like when Tom didn't want to do backflips anymore, and he just went, "Okay, I'm going to do freestyle motocross my way," and basically he almost completely changed how freestyle comps worked, or at least he was winning every event at X Fighters without the backflip. But he came up with bike flips and all the
Right.
flares and alley oop flares and everything else. So you
Right.
were just doing it with events instead, which is freaking awesome. So,
Right.
no,
Yeah. No,
congrats, man.
thanks.
It's so gnarly. It's so gnarly that you're part of all those things. But it's not the end. Because I didn't know this as well until must have only been a couple of weeks ago. You were also part of the movie Unchained, and it's on Netflix at the moment, or at least it is here in Europe. I don't know if it's on Netflix over there,
Yep.
but basically the freestyle motocross documentary, and you've picked yourself up an Emmy for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unbelievable. That's an interesting thing because it was totally unexpected. I In like 2008, I moved to Seattle and kind of took a break from everything and was just trying to find myself. And when I came back in 2011, I just happened to come across someone that had worked at ESPN, and I think Ryan Leba at the time was doing all the
Oh yeah.
writing, and he was getting ready to leave. So I emailed the lady that was in charge, and I'm like, give me a chance. I've got all these connections and resources. Like I can be a really valuable asset to you. And she's like, all right, well, here's an assignment. Turn it in and let me, see what you can do. So I covered this assignment and I turned it in, and she emailed me back and she goes, chase down every lead you have, every idea for every story, turn them in, we'll take them all. And so I just started,
What?
so I just started writing for ESPN, which was, later became xgames.com. And I was trying to, find my way. I didn't, know what I wanted to do. I wasn't really writing. I was living at Derek Garland's house, and I just started cranking out these stories like 3 or 4 a week. And
Whoa.
just, so that kind of got me onto the map. And what had actually happened was they asked me to go. Paul was recording all the interviews at Pro Circuit, and ESPN asked me to go down there and cover it for the website. And so I went down there and I was talking to Paul about the movie, and there was like an hour break, and he's like, do you want to sit in the chair? You're part of everything, we'll interview you.
Huh.
So I got in the chair and I interviewed him, or he interviewed me, and he's like, you're making the movie for sure. We definitely like what you're just saying. And so I went home, and then a couple weeks later, Paul had hit me up and he's like, we're looking for someone to help us with the movie. We need someone that understands story. And Eric Johnson had referred me to them, that, I
Whoa.
could be someone that might be able to help. So basically what they needed was someone that understood how to put story together. And basically they had 50 people they interviewed, and they had the videos transcribed. And what they needed someone to do was to go through each interview and copy and paste. Like, let's say they were talking
Ah.
about the double backflip, they put
Yeah.
that into the outline of the double backflip. So every person that talked about whatever, I basically organized every single part, so that way when the editor put the piece together and they needed someone to talk about Daredevils for Seth
Yeah.
Enslow's part, it was in the master
It's
Excel, and they can.
it's already sitting there. They just have to go find that video and
Right.
put
So
it in.
I was like the librarian basically, because I knew where everything was. And it took me about 6 weeks or 8 weeks to go through every single person's interview and
Man, that's gnarly.
to put it all together. But then from that point on, Paul, he kept me on the project, so I helped with other things to do with the movie. But yeah, it was like a 3-year project, and I was super
Whoa.
super grateful and super lucky to have gotten that opportunity. And none of us knew that winning an Emmy would even be in the cards. I remember getting a phone call and was like, hey, that nomination we got, well, we actually won, and because you were a producer, you're an official producer, you actually get an Emmy too. And I was just like, wow, people go their entire lives in the film industry or TV industry and
Yeah.
never get one of these things. And here, we just got a bunch dropped off out of nowhere.
No way. Just a
Yeah.
whole bunch of Emmys turning up. All right, let's dish them out to the boys. All right, you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
Man, that
So,
is insane. And what is the Emmy for? Like what is the category or whatever?
well, hold on, let me see.
Oh, the librarian's out.
Let's see. It says 2016 Sports Emmy Award, Outstanding Long Sports Documentary for Unchained, the Untold Story of Freestyle Motocross.
Whoa.
So, yeah, so long sports documentary.
Huh. That is so crazy. How the hell did Freestyle Motocross end up getting an Emmy? That's
Yeah,
just crazy.
well, I'll tell you, it's because the footage is unbelievable. Like, everyone's stories are, never in a million years will you get like Carey Hart and Mike Metzger and Brian Deegan and Tony Hawk and all these guys to just come in and just tell the story so candidly. I remember going through everything, calling Paul and being like, dude, do you realize how much gold you have? Like, these guys will
Yeah.
never come in and do this ever again. Like, to get as many people as you did to come in and just so candidly tell their story truthfully. I'm like, man, this is such, like, it's so golden, all this footage. And it goes to show, because we won an Emmy 3 years
For
later.
sure.
I mean,
Exactly. Like,
it's
yeah.
insane.
Yeah, like I watched it when it came out. So I think, yeah, what was it, 2016 it came out. And I watched it again just today, just because I was like, okay, I know I'm going to give Doug a call. I'm just going to sit down and watch this movie again. And
Yeah.
I was just sitting on the couch, and like it was the first time watching the first backflip with Carey, and like the first time I saw Travis doing the double flip in comp, and I'm just sitting there with goosebumps pretty much that entire movie. And it's like, that was so gnarly. Like, and thinking about that movie was kind of really only from what, 1995, 6, 7, 8 to 2006 is basically really what it covered. And then just like the last bit was, where it is now. So it's really like all this progression happened like year after year after year after year. And the stories were just getting so big and so fanciful. And then it keeps coming up with like, oh, and in 2003, this happened. I'm like, what? I remember all of it, of course. And I remember it happening at the time. But looking back now, thinking about where we are in 2020, and to think that only from 2000 to 2004 was backflip, then Metzger taking it backflip in the line, and and then to the 360, and then it was only 2 years after that, and there's a double flip. And I think, was it in the middle of that? Maybe was it 05 or was it 07 when there was the body varials coming in as well with the Corolla? And I'm just like, oh man, I forgot how gnarly it was back then. Like, it was just so crazy.
Right. Yeah. Every day, someone was doing something new. Every X Games, someone was doing something to dirt for the first time. It was literally like historical. Every single time the books were changing.
Yeah, and maybe that's the problem we're at now with freestyle. Like, everything just happened so damn fast back then. Like, man, imagine if they just like just scattered it out like a year or two extra in between everything that was gnarly. Like, but now everyone's seen it all before. Like, the tricks that are in competition, okay, there are new tricks, of course, I know there are, but the progression now is not what it was back then. Like, back then, every day was like, oh, that can't be done. Oh, it was just done. What? And then the next day, oh, that can't be done. Oh, no, somebody just went and did it. You got to be kidding me. Like, it was just off the rails.
Right. Yeah. I think without the airbags and the Nitro Circus, those guys are really the only ones that are trying new things. And even then, it's like, what is freestyle now? Like, the sport is, even with X Games being canceled, it's just, ew, it's scary, man.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, where do we go? Where does it all go from now? And like, that's where I was thinking, a couple of years ago. Basically, obviously I've been thinking this all the time. Like, this is my job, and I hope I've got a job for a little bit longer. And I was like, okay, well, for me, in my mind, free ride has to be part of the future. Like, freestyle motocross is just getting so gnarly that only a few guys are stupid enough to risk everything for it. And you're going to have less and less people doing it, and then there's going to be less and less progress, and who knows where that goes. But free riding in an age of Instagram is, there's something about that. I think, like, imagine if you were doing Ride to the Hills now. Like, every event, you've got a completely different place, not just the same indoor stadium or the same indoor arena, and the footage kind of looks the same, but the tricks are a little bit different and whatever. So that's why I was like, okay, free ride, maybe it goes this direction, and then maybe freestyle motocross, like with this whole moon booters and everything like that, maybe it turns into a video game style. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. People have been, trying to figure out how do you, make free riding into a business model where you can go out and do that. It's from day one that in the early days it was because videos sold and it made sense to do that. But now
Exactly.
it's like everything's on YouTube for free. So what's the business model going to be? There needs to be some sort of business model where if we want to go out and free ride in the hills, that you can get paid at doing it somehow, and that's the $1 million question.
Yeah, that's it. That's where I see the biggest problem for events and things like that. It's like, okay, you can just like, yeah, you see Colby just going out and doing whatever he wants, and you see it straight away. It's straight on Instagram. Or you see Tyler Berriman doing something with Matto. I mean, obviously they did that with Red Bull in LA, and that was a huge deal. But pretty much as soon as it was done, it was up for free, and you didn't have to wait 6 months or 12 months for it to go into a video and then go buy the video and everyone buys the video. That's disappeared. That's gone. So
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Are you involved in any of these discussions with, like, obviously you've been working with Paul Taubleib and Schweitzer and everyone like that. Like, I'm guessing they've got the same issues.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't spoke to Jay in a really long time. And I'm not too sure what anyone's thinking right now, just with the way the economy is right now and the coronavirus. But really, how guys have basically, if you're in X Games and you're a contender, usually you're going to have a Monster, a Rockstar, or a Red Bull, and that's what helps pay the bills. The majority of everyone that's out free riding has either got something else going that enables
Yeah,
them to go out and free ride, because we all want to just free ride, but that's nobody's getting paid to just free ride. Like everyone's always got something else going on, and then that is giving them the resources to do it. So um I don't know. I don't know what this year is going to do towards these guys having those deals that ride X Games and then they go out and free ride during the week and everything else. I don't know how sponsors are going to change. I have a feeling that it's not going to be good. Anytime sponsors pull back, they never come back with what they
exactly.
normally put in. So I can see a lot of guys losing rides. The whole entertainment industry is down, so that means guys doing shows is out the window. So the guys that don't have sponsors but make money writing shows, who knows what they're gonna do. It's a rocky time, and I don't really know, but that with my podcast, I'm hoping that it turns into something where I can do that, where I can get some advertisers on board, and then that gives me the resources to go out and ride during the week, because with me riding the shows gonna be a whole lot easier to promote. So um the pod
That's it.
the
Exactly.
pod
Well, that was one question I wanted to ask you about. Like, you have your own podcast, the Motocross Show,
the
I
Moto
believe
X
it's
show,
called.
yeah.
Moto X Show. Yeah, the Moto X Show. How did you get into it? Like, and how long have you been doing it for?
Well, basically how I got into it was um in 2017 I moved to Phoenix, and I had started going to college. I wanted to get a degree
Oh,
in psychology, and I wanted to be a sports psychologist and work with athletes and stuff like that. And I hadn't I hadn't really ever listened to a podcast before. I didn't know what podcasts were, even though I had listened to the Toyota Escondido Action Sports Show and was really into that, listened to all those episodes, but I didn't really know that that was a podcast. I just know that when I
yeah.
plugged my phone into my truck, that show opened up, and that's basically all I knew about podcasts. And then I watched a podcast on YouTube with Dan Bilzerian on Joe Rogan, and I was like, "What is this?" And then I somehow came across that it was that purple app on my iPhone, these podcasts. So I started listening to them. I'm like, "Holy shit, these things are dope! Like, this is right up my alley." And I was just like, "Man, I don't know if like." I really struggled in the beginning with, like what kind of narcissist am I to think I can start a podcast? And, like what kind of
Yeah.
egomaniacal maniac am I? And basically, like while I was in college, I was just looking for a way to make a little bit of money so I could focus on going to school full time. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
I've got these cool stories. I grew up in Reche. I saw a lot of stuff go down in Reche. I was part of all these other things, and I thought, like, I have some badass friends, and I would love to just have them on and shoot the shit and talk about the good old days and tell stories. And so I started this podcast, not knowing anything about podcasts and how hard it was going to be for me. So it started out that I was looking for a way to pay for myself to go to college, and then I instantly realized how hard it was. And then it, after a year or so,
Yeah.
it became like, this is the scariest thing I can do to better myself. And so once I reached that point, you know, I think I had maybe done 20 or 30 episodes, and I wasn't doing them consistent.
Whoa.
I wasn't really into it. I knew I sucked at it. I was like really uncomfortable with them. And I think since 2000, I don't know if I started in, I think the spring of 18, maybe. So 18, 19, and 20. Yeah. So just in 2000, towards the end of 19, I really started like buckling down on it, and like, you know it's really forced me to like face the facts. Like I've really put myself out there in a really vulnerable way, and I've really had to like accept the things that, maybe I had been trying to lie to myself about, or, like I've had to like really eat a humble piece of pie and just be like, dude, when people come on this show, like you can't be afraid to not talk about anything, and you cannot be afraid to skirt something that maybe you don't want to admit to, or you don't want to cop up to. Like, it's really like forced me to like really work on myself, and be also learn how to be a better host. And I have these awesome guests on, and these guys are, I feel like I was doing them a disservice. And so it's just really forced me to work on this new role, because normally I'm the guy being interviewed. And in that role, I'm really comfortable. Like, I have a lot to say, and I feel really comfortable. But when you put me on the other side where I'm the person interviewing the guest, like now I'm in this completely foreign box that I know nothing about. And
Yeah.
I've always been an introvert. I've always been like keep to myself, really quiet. And now I have to switch over to this extrovert personality. And, it took some time for me to get comfortable with that, and then to really embrace it. And now with the podcast, I feel like I'm getting better at it, and it's getting better. And, at some point, like, I could actually turn it into something that like I'm really proud of, and that, people could come on because they're getting a lot of exposure from. So, um, that's kind of like what the podcast is now. And it's, it, I like it, but I'm really outside my comfort
Yeah.
zone, even though it's, I hope everyone enjoys it as well.
That's really crazy to hear that. Because you have the experience writing for ESPN and then X Games for so long. You have been in front of the camera for what, more than 20 years. You've done all these things. But then to turn to be on the other side of the microphone, or be on the other side of the interview and doing the job, I didn't. I'm surprised that it was so difficult.
Yeah.
And like where you said like you were, the fear and things like that, like what was the fear of? And being, I know I understood definitely the part where you said what kind of ego, or whatever, because I felt the exact same when my friend Joel was telling me I should do this. I was like, what? Who the fuck would want to listen to me talk to somebody else? Like, why would I do it? Like, go find somebody else that's way more qualified to do this, because I'm not. So yeah, I know exactly those feelings, but I was just surprised that you had kind of that fear that you did a disservice as well to to the people you had on?
Yeah. You know what? I don't know. It's some form of social anxiety, I'm sure, and just
Yeah,
it's something that it's completely foreign to me. So I don't know why. Well, why I would fear it, but it's just, I mean, it just comes down to confidence, and what's confidence?
yeah,
Confidence is certainty, and I think because I'm doing something and I'm uncertain of it, that creates maybe the nervousness and whatnot, and um, always comparing everything I do to like the talent that I had on my dirt bike. This was
yeah,
the first time that I'm so far outside my comfort zone that like I'm completely learning something completely new, and I don't know, it's just talking and stuff. Like, I'm better being on the other side of the thing. It's mainly just probably knowing the mechanics of how to
yeah.
lead or host a show, and you know um not knowing that and learning it the hard way.
Yeah, exactly. I know, like, I was pretty lucky. Like, if I look back, I'm just thinking this straight off the top of my head now. Like, in Australia, there was a TV show called Homegrown Maniacs, and it was kind of like, damn it, M80. It was kind of like the M80 back then, like an Australian version of it on Fuel TV. And the guy who was creating it, Holtzy, he came over from the West Coast over to the East Coast, and he just asked me if I wanted to host some episodes. And one of the episodes was on like my place and where I was riding. And I look back at those videos, man, it's so embarrassing. Like, I think it was 2007 or 2008, first time I've ever had to be the host and not the one being asked the questions. And I had this full Australian accent. Yeah, yeah, what's it like to go do that jump? And like, oh, it's horrible looking back. So I know at least now I'm not as bad as I was then, but still, that there is always that feeling, because when you're the rider being asked a question, you know the answer. Like, you're the expert on a motorbike, so you give your answer, and that's what it is.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
yeah, and I
that
think
expertness I'm not an expert by any means in the being a podcast host, and that's probably where a lot of the anxiety comes from.
Yeah, that's it. And no, but I mean, honestly, they're coming out sweet. And it's like the people you're having on and the questions you've put to them. Like, I was listening to one with, I think it was Dustin Miller. And
Yeah.
like, again, this is because like I'm pretty much only freestyle motocross, because I know you do. You have other guys on there from motocross and supercross and whatever else. But so I was really just listening to the freestyle guys, and yeah, just listening to that one with Dustin was just awesome. And yeah, you were riding with him in those times, so you've got that background info, and you can really extract so much more out of them than somebody who doesn't know them.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, I hope so. I hope I'm bringing it. That's for sure. The Miller episode was like probably one of the best ones that I've done. I
I'm
really,
glad I listened to a good one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think I got like 3,000 new subscribers after that episode. So I know
Whoa,
the listeners really liked it and stuff. So, um, yeah, man. I don't know.
that
It's a lot of fun. It's definitely, like I said, it was the scariest thing I could do to better myself. So
that is gnarly. And did you ever finish the psychology degree?
no, I got like
No.
three semesters
Oh,
in, and I don't know. I would love to
ah,
go back and
man.
do it, but it's tough, man. It's a lot of time and whatnot.
Yeah, I was at uni for 6.5 years, and I have nightmares actually still to this day that I just would not want to go back to university. That was hard. Like, it was easy getting drunk every day. That part was fine.
Yeah.
But oh man, the time and the stress that goes into uni was just a nightmare. So I don't even know how you would want to do that. what was it called? Like when you go there, not out of school, is it middle aged learning or I don't know. Like I always remember there'd always be a couple of people turning up to some lessons, and you got all these 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and then someone turns up and they're 30, and you're like, what
Yeah.
the hell are you doing here? Like, get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
But
me.
oh man, uni was hard work, and I definitely don't want to go back to that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm surprised you did it in the first place. What was the plan? What were you thinking to do with the psych degree?
I wanted to work with athletes and help with
Oh, sorry, you
development.
did say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, um,
And that was basically, it was basically just for the sports athletes and getting into that.
yeah, since I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a psychologist, and once I went through my athlete career, I'd always wanted to be more specific and work with sports psychology, and so psychology is just something I've always like really been into, and it's been a really easy subject for me to understand and learn, and so when I was looking for a job and something to do, a career, I thought I would give that a shot. But the amount of schooling you have to go through and the amount of time you need and how much it costs, I just didn't want to do that at the time I was doing it. So,
Yeah, that's it. And there's one thing in the background that I also didn't know, but there was a very small mention of, and you brought it up with me: drug addiction. How does this come into play with you, and is this part of the freestyle career or the ending of the freestyle career, or yeah, tell us about that.
yeah, like I think it was partly with the flip and you know trying to deal with the fact that the whole career, the whole gig is going to be up, and trying to figure out like what to do, and you know just trying to come to terms with all that, and you know you riding every day and you got these injuries and stuff, and you take these painkillers and your injuries don't hurt as bad, and then now you've got this like these mental issues that you're going through, and when you take these pills things get a little bit easier, or they get put off, or you don't
Yeah.
have to deal with the facts of reality and whatnot, and before you know it you're doing it to cope, and you're doing it to just deal with life and get through things. The next thing you know, you're addicted to them, and now you're fighting this whole new battle, and it takes years away from your life and everything. You're a prisoner of your own mind, and basically it just took some, it's from 2008 ish. Well, it actually started in like around
Okay.
5 or 6, but around
Well, when did
2008.
you retire from freestyle? What year
Well,
was that?
2005 was the last year that I really
Okay.
rode. I think I rode maybe a couple times, but I was already like just sitting at home. I thought like, oh, I'm just gonna produce TV shows. I don't need to ride, and that's kind of like when my tolerance like really went up, and then like around 2008 was when I was like, dude, I need to make a change. I need to get out of here, and that's when I moved to Seattle, and I don't know. It was still it's been an on again, off again battle, from 2005 or 4ish up until
Damn.
there was years where I was be clean for a few years, and then have like a year where I relapse, and then you go back to um, getting clean again, and then you relapse, and it takes a few times before you get it right. But I think
Yeah.
since
And
around 2000, like middle of 2017, like I got clean again, and then
whoa.
I'd always be like, oh, I'm gonna get clean, but then I would drink like every day, and not like crazy drink, but I would
Yeah.
drink every single day. I'd have a glass of wine, or I'd drink a couple silver bullets, like whatever. And then this
Yeah.
last time around, I was just like, dude, you know what? I'm over it. I'm so sick of like failing. Like I'm a prisoner in my own mind. I can't stand this shit. I can't stand who I am. I can't stand the people that I'm around. I'm around these scumbags all the time. it just takes you to the dirtiest places. I got like some really close calls, like, you know, I'm handcuffed sitting on the sidewalk on the curb while these cops are going through my truck, and I've got like I've got 4 or 5 pill bottles on the hood of my truck. I've got like pills in bags stuffed in prescription bottles with no labels. Like, I always had a prescription so that I'd always be covered, but still, like, I would have other pills and stuff. And there was a couple times where like I got pulled over, and somehow, some way, I like was able to talk my way out of it. And I'm looking at the cops, and I'm looking at all the shit on my hood, and I'm just thinking like, there's no way
Fuck.
they're gonna let me go. And this just didn't happen like once or twice. Like, this happened a few times, and I was just like, man, like, for whatever reason, I have this gift where I can talk my way out of like a really serious situation. And so I just, towards like 2017, I was like, dude, I can't handle these close calls anymore. I'm like, dude, if I'm going to give this a go, I'm going to do it 100%. And so I was like, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do anything. And, I'm coming up
That's
on,
such a long time.
yeah. So I'm coming.
And it started from then. I'm guessing it was the painkillers that you said at the start. Was the catalyst?
Yeah. Like, that was, yeah, the painkillers. It was the
Yeah.
painkillers throughout the whole time.
Okay. Ah, man. I I don't live on painkillers, but since my crash 2.5 years ago, because I've seen a lot of friends get stuck on painkillers and maybe getting to worse or whatever, and you hear the stories of other people getting onto different drugs, and then maybe it gets to the point where they're not here anymore. I've always had like a pretty big, not a fear, but I'm just so aware that I do not want to take painkillers unless I absolutely have to. And so when I had this last crash, which has basically put me out of freestyle anyway, which pretty much ended my career, even just to walk, I I had to take a hell of a lot of ibuprofen. And ibuprofen's just an anti-inflammatory. It's nothing, but what it has done is completely destroyed like my guts. So and then I was like, okay, I'm getting all these like intestinal problems and stomach problems and whatever. I'm like, for fuck's sake, like if I don't take painkillers, then I took these just to move, but now that's destroyed something else. So then I just stopped taking everything, and pretty much for the last year, I barely go outside because it just hurts. Like every day, you're just sitting in pain going, oh, for fuck's sake. Like Rach wants to, like my wife wants to go out and do something. She's, oh, let's go do this. I'm like, nah, I could stay here and just, play video games. That'd be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Like, so I completely understand it, because like when you've got that pain that's just always there, like you just want it to go away. And I know what I need to do to get rid of it, and that's to have a full hip replacement, but I'm trying to put that off as long as possible.
Yeah.
But in another way, it's completely destroying my life because I'm just so unmotivated to do anything physically because I know it hurts. So I'm just sitting here using my head and just on the laptop all day, just thinking and coming up with projects and whatever, but I'm not getting outside and actually kind of living the life. So it's damn pain and painkillers and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, they'll get you, man. I know that all too well. It's a rough one to go through. That's for sure. It's taking down so many people. I mean, people you wouldn't even think that are doing pills are doing pills. Like, the being on that side of the program for a while, like the people, I would be like, holy shit, you do fucking pills too? I'm like,
Really?
like team managers and team owners and like just the shit. I'm like, holy shit. Like, it's such a two-sided thing in our sport where, some of these people like get caught up on the other side, and the majority of people don't see it. and it's just like, man, it'll get anyone. Like, it does not
Yeah.
discriminate. They will they will get anyone and everyone. And especially now, like, you know, with this fentanyl coming in from China and stuff, it's just like, I literally
Yeah.
saw, like, someone turn blue and purple and had to give them
No way.
CPR. And like, it's so crazy now. Like, I'm so glad I got out of it now. And just how dangerous it is. Like, they're putting fentanyl in everything, and it's fucking so gnarly and so scary because people have no idea. Like,
What is
you can count out 5 or 6 grains of fentanyl, and that will kill someone in 30 seconds from them ingesting
what?
it. It is so strong. It's so crazy. It's people I am so scared for people that do drugs now, because they're packing fentanyl into Xanax pills. They're putting it into all these different things. I even heard that they were like putting fentanyl into cocaine to get the users hooked, so they'll keep coming back to buy more cocaine. Like, they're putting it in everything, and it's so scary, because if you say, like, you're just someone that buys Xanax on the street, you don't take opiates or anything, but
Yeah.
you get these Xanax bars, and they were putting fentanyl in these bars, and these people are taking these bars, and then they're dropping dead, 30
No
minutes
way.
later. And they have no idea. And it's insane. It's so scary to think about, like, where all that shit is going now. And like, the
That's so
it's
nuts.
insane. It's I hope, if people are out there struggling, like, get help, do whatever you got to do, because it's never going to end well. Like, it will take all your money, it will take everything from you, it will eat every relationship up, it will ruin your reputation, it will take years for you to get it all back, and it takes about 5 minutes to lose it all. So, um
Far out.
it's just fucking, it's gnarly, man. It's no joke. Like, I'm lucky that I was able to pull through and, you know somewhat
That's so
put,
gnarly.
slowly putting the pieces back together.
And I don't know, like, was this something really from you that got you out of this, or did you have friends that helped you come out of this problem?
Well, like, I always knew while I was doing them that, like, I wasn't the people that I was hanging around with. Like,
Yeah.
there were some of my friends that I was hanging around with that they weren't those people either. And
Yeah.
in the back of my mind, I always knew I was going to get off of them and, like, figure everything out. Like, I was just, you know, use it. It was some sort of coping mechanism, and at some point I was going to work through that, and then, I would get back to, like, the life that I always had known. So I just it takes a few times to figure it out. You get clean, and then you have some time under you, and then you're like, oh, you know what, I can cheat, I can have a cheat day. And you do,
Yeah.
you have a couple, and then next thing you know, it's 3 days later, and then it's 5 days, and then it's seven, and then now you're hooked on them again. And here's another 6 9 months of, like, trying to get off of it, and then you get clean and get some time under you, and then you do it again. And then, it takes a few times where you're like, you know what, I've had enough cheat days. I can't go there anymore. Like, for me now, like, if I take painkillers for more than 3 days, like, I'll be hooked. Like, it
Yeah.
even having years clean, it still will take me 3 days. Sometimes it'll take me 48 hours, and I'm like, dude, I already need them. Like, I can already.
Bloody hell.
It's just crazy because I've done them for so long. So it's it's nuts, man. It's crazy what it can do to you. And you just got to get to a point where you're like, you know what? Basically, what I did this last time was I just I created this value system for me. I always
Yeah.
valued wanting to get high more than I wanted to stay sober. And so I just flipped that, and I just created this value system
Yeah.
where I valued being sober more than I valued getting high or drunk. And that's like really what helped me. But also another huge thing that really helped me was right as I was getting clean this last time is when I found out that we won the Emmy. And that was kind of,
That's cool.
yeah, that was kind of like a little like bonus thing for me to be like, you know what, like, because I had always viewed my writing career as a failure. And when I won this Emmy, I was just like, you know what, like I have something like super cool to look back on and be proud of now. And that Emmy was like really kind of like a shining moment for me to be like, you know what, uh, I, I'm not a complete failure. Like I put a ton of work into this project and I was rewarded in this way that I never thought possible. And at that, it was also at the same time that I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to, do sports psychology and stuff like that. So I just put a lot more value into like the positive things that I had going on at the time. And um, that, really helped things, I think, the most.
Man, there's so much to unpack from that. That's so gnarly. Like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that's crazy. Like, I mean, it's just, of course, it's just your opinion and just how you felt on it. But like, again, as I was a freestyle motocross fan first and foremost, so as a kid, like looking up to you guys, like no way would I have ever thought like that was a failure or anyone would think that. But then, of course, you've got that feeling in the back of your mind. Okay, the fucking backflip, and all those sorts of things. I can get that. But yeah, I mean, to get that Emmy at the end, probably a good timing by the sounds of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I
For that
know. It
to
was
happen.
perfect. I mean, yeah, it was.
Far out.
Yeah, it was perfect.
So I don't want to, sit here and think about all the negatives because there is the positive. Like you've come out of it all and you're feeling better now and you're clean and you've got these rewards and you've got all these projects that are still going on and the podcast's going awesome. But I really want to think about probably some of the best images I have of your riding is Manny's jump. I just wanted to get your thoughts on jumping that fucking ridiculous jump that I guess only a few guys ever did. Tell us about that. Like this is going way back in the glory days. I don't know when it was, but yeah, I just wanted to hear your story and how the fuck did you even jump that?
Yeah, Manny's jump was the big dog that was a great day. I think Colin called me and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna film with Godfrey." He's like, "I want you to come out and ride. It'll be dope. Have a lot of fun riding with you, and you're someone that goes big." I always liked doing big distance jumps, and that was kind of Colin's deal too. So we rolled out, dude. We smoked weed all day long and just freaking sent it on the big dog. And I remember like following him. I followed
Who
him.
jumped it first?
Well,
Did Scummy hit it first?
Chuck
Or?
jumped it first, but that day with Colin and I, Colin jumped it first. And I just remember following him. He's like fifth gear, and I got in behind him like once, and the roost was so bad. It was like these sand pebbles. And I just remember following him, and I was like, "Oh, dude, I was like, dude, fuck that, dude. I'll just hit it on my own," because it was just shredding up my arms. So I just went back and jumped it on my own, and then got it dialed. And I'm like, dude, I think I can do a seat grab on this. And so I went to do a seat grab the first time, and I like almost looped out at like 200 feet because the wheel was spinning so fast that the front end just like, as soon as I jumped, I wasn't anticipating that. And the front end got like real light and came up. So I had to adjust how I was hitting it. And as soon as I left the lip, I would like preload over the front end of the bike and then jump off. So that way my body was over the front of the bike, but I was still jumping up into a grab and doing a grab. And then they didn't show that in Global Addiction because I didn't really know what was going on. Colin just told me to come out and ride, but they had done like a whole skit where he was having nightmares and they show him sleeping in his bed, like tossing and turning, and then he shows up to Manny's and he does this huge jump. And then, so it wouldn't have looked great if they were showing me doing heart attacks and stuff while it was like his moment to shine.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that
definitely.
was that was pretty much what was going on. And then they also had a ramp, and that was also one of the first times that I ever did like a really flat no-footed knack, and that's kind of like where the flatliner came from.
Was
Was
that the flatliner day as well?
yeah, that was the same day. So
Holy crap!
yeah,
So, can you explain, like what this place was? Like, what is Manny's and what's there? Because,
so
you know,
Manny's was just, it was called Manny's Yard, and Manny Jubala, he was super cool. He had this, his family had a construction company and they had all their equipment in this yard, but he also had a freestyle jump, and it was like one of the main spots that the guys in Temecula would practice freestyle at. And he was super cool with letting us come out and ride. And then in the back part of the property is where he had this huge mountain. It was like,
yeah,
this
it's a
huge mountain.
monster.
Yeah, it was huge. And he cut out the face and got some dirt to build some takeoff. So there was like a really short distance one. There was one that was set at like 140, and then there was the big line that was at like 200. So it was
Fuck.
super super cool spot to like to have to ride, because at this point I remember going there, like this was before I had switched to freestyle, and I wasn't really in with anyone. I didn't have my own spot yet, and I remember him letting me go out there and learn tricks. I remember going out there on my 125, and like when I was still like a full blown racer and like trying to learn tricks and stuff. He was super cool letting us come out and ride. And later on, as like I'd gotten to freestyle full times, when we filmed with Godfrey out there and for Global Addiction, and me and Colin did that big old huge jump. But yeah,
Fuck.
I remember being so high up in the air that I could see Lake Elsinore, like, 20 miles to my north. It was crazy.
No way. Like, that jump is so ridiculous. I hope you've still got the footage of it and you can send it over. I'd love to chuck it up on the Instagram
Yeah.
because that was like, I remember watching, like, there was you, yeah, Scummy, Seth Enslow had a huge crash on it. I
Huge.
remember. I think he
Yep.
came up short. Did he come up short or did he go
Yeah,
long?
or I don't know. I think
Can't remember.
I don't know if his wheel blew out or his fork snapped off, but like I know I think he broke both his femurs at the same time. But yeah, it was freaking gnarly, that's for sure.
Far out. And then you did that flatliner as well. So, yeah,
Right.
I hope you got all those photos. You can send them to me because I just want to see them again and I'll chuck them up on
Yeah.
Instagram
Yeah,
because
and I think I have the
that
video.
flatliner was sick.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty
Nice.
cool, man. That was a super fun day for sure. Like those were the days we lived for. We're just going out filming and riding. Like that's pretty much like what I grew up doing in Ritchie was filming. Like I remember when Krusty's wasn't even Krusty's. It was just John, and it was mainly Dana who came out in the hills and would just be like, fucking huck it, bro. And I'm
That's
like,
so Dana.
he would like come up with these lines, and I'm like, well, if you do it, then I'll do it. And he would seriously try something completely ridiculous and then be like, well, what up, bro? Fucking
Dude, Dana would do it.
you don't trust your skills? Like, what's up, guy? So
Did Dana jump him as well?
he would try. He would climb shit, or he would basically either throw his bike, or mainly he would like compromise and be like, well, I'll try climbing that hill. And we're like, there's no way you're gonna make that hill, but I'll watch you throw it and crash down the hill, and then I'll come over and try this line. But a lot of times he would have like snowboard lines where it was like step downs and like crazy shit. But those, that was what the beginning days were like in Ritchie, was those guys coming out and filming. And it was like that was what I grew up knowing, was coming home from school and Seth and Sink Mars are parked in my driveway, and get my
No
gear on
way.
and go out in the hills and find them and shit. Like that happened all the time. And um So,
That's insane.
yeah, like,
You've just got legends in your backyard.
right. Yeah.
No
Like that.
problem.
It was just no big deal for me to come home from school and see, like, you know, McGrath and all these guys parked on the side of my house and shit, and going out and finding them in the hills. Or, I remember one year Pastrana came out, there was like this tire double in the back of the hills. And I shit you not, every single day I came home, someone came to my house, some pro racer, and was like, take me to the tire double. I heard about this crazy tire double, and I must have went to this tire double 1,000 times this one season. And it was insane how many people were like, take me to the tire double. And it was just this double that my boy Tommy made. And I remember he like mixed some bags of cement because he was thinking like, to keep the lip from chewing up, we'll like pack cement on it. And it didn't work, but like, so we would throw like 20 tires on the lip, so when we left at the end of the day, no one would ride on it, and it became known as the tire double. But
No way. And how big was this thing?
it was probably like, it was a hip, so it was like a takeoff, and then it was a gap to like a side of a hill that came down. And I think on my 125 it was probably like fourth gear, like pretty wide open, so it was maybe like 100 feet, I'm not sure, but you had to whip it to land into the right spot. So it was kind of tech, and some guys would like, the back end would kick back on them and they'd swap out and land. But it was
Yeah.
it was pretty cool, like Dana came out with Pastrana and we filmed on it, and there was like a 2-page spread. And I don't know if it's MX Machine or one of the mags, but it's like me and Pastrana together on the tire double jump. I think I have pictures of that I can send to you. But yeah, it was cool, like filming in the hills and all that video stuff was like basically, those were like the roots and the seeds of all the freestyle that later became for me.
That's so gnarly. And I bet back then you didn't think that those are the days you're going to remember. And here you are,
Yep.
20 years later or whatever, and just going, that they were the days.
Yep. Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy thing that day that Pastrana came out. I remember I was riding my race bike, and so I didn't really want to put much time on it, but I had gone to that jump so many times that I remember John and Pastrana, or Dana, came out and Pastrana, and they're like, take us to that jump. And I remember I took them to that jump. I must have hit it like 4 or 5 times. And then I'm like, all right, see you guys later. And I rode home because I was so burnt out that, here's like Pastrana, he's just like this phenom, and here's Dana of Crusty Demons of Dirt. But it was no big deal for me to go film with those guys or ride with those guys because it happened every single day. And I always look back on that like, what a crazy place I was in, where I was just like, all right, see you guys later. I'm going to go home and do absolutely nothing while you guys are out here filming, making, Crusty 6 or 7, whatever it is. But that was just like, that's all I knew. It was just like, tomorrow, another group of guys are going to come out and we're going to go out and film. And, it's just crazy. I always remember that day because of that.
Yeah, man, that is gnarly actually, because I remember I was riding a lot with Shuey, and he was good mates with Freeman and Nicholson, doing all the Krusty tours and everything like that. And he said, yeah, next week they're coming out to film Krusty. And of course, I was going to be there anyway, but I definitely was not going to miss it. So I made sure I was there, and Shuey had built this huge step up, and then made this step down, and he had all the other jumps around, and there was a 180 footer just over the hill. And so I was jumping everything and doing whatever. But of course, when there's a helicopter and you've got bloody Freeman hanging out of this helicopter with a camera, and I don't know, maybe I didn't eat enough that day and I was just getting too excited. I don't know what it was, but I just did the step up, turned around, did the step down, and I just completely ate so much shit. I just got like this in-swinger, and it was a third gear step down, and I landed at the bottom of it and just got smashed into the ground. and they missed the shot. I was pissed. Like, the only thing they got of the shot was like me walking over to the bike to pick it up and everybody already there. I was like, no way, I've had like this huge crash for Krusty, and they missed it. I think the helicopter was like spinning around, like it was doing like a 180. So he saw the step up, but that wasn't anything spectacular. And then he missed the fucking crash. So
Damn.
yeah, that sucked. And then I think it was maybe the year later they came back again, and that was actually my first wedding anniversary. And yeah, so I knew they were coming out, and I was like, sorry, Rach, but I got to go ride because there's a fucking Krusty video being made, and I am not missing it because they missed my last crash. Like, I don't want to crash, but I definitely want to be in another video. And I think I even went up in the helicopter that day as well, which was pretty cool. It was the first time I was in a heli. But yeah, so we were filming at Shuey's again with Krusty. It's on my first wedding anniversary. My wife wasn't pissed, but it definitely wasn't the romantic thing that she probably expected to have that day. So then we finished up, and I guess they were going to have some beers, and that was it for the day. So we jumped in the car and we were just driving along. I was just looking, for something to stop by, like maybe a lake or some waterfalls or something out in Boona. And there was on the side of the road, there was like a little cart selling pumpkins for $1. And I just pulled in. I went, I'm like, yep, ran over, grabbed a pumpkin. I'm like, there you go, Rach. Happy anniversary. There's your pumpkin. So, actually, we just had our 10th wedding anniversary last week or the week before.
Nice, congrats.
Yeah, our thing pretty much is every wedding anniversary we get a pumpkin.
No way.
For ourselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it started from our first wedding anniversary on a Krusty film shoot. I was such a tight ass and so useless that I didn't even think of it until I was in trouble. So there you go. And for you, that was just another day. Come home from school and there's the boys. So, and I'm here running around buying fucking pumpkins.
That's cool though. You turned it into something special.
I didn't. I think she did. Maybe it was she's like, well, this is him.
Yeah.
I've got to make the best of a bad situation here. So yeah, pumpkin's nice. Okay, I think it was nice. So no, I think I'm pretty lucky because I think pretty much any other woman would have walked out on me.
Yeah.
So, over the years, and being a nurse all the time. So yeah, I think I'm definitely lucky on that. So no, but I mean, thank you very much for joining us. We easily got to 2 hours. I know we were talking about an hour to an hour and a half, and you said, I've got enough material to keep going.
Yeah.
You were right about that. So I won't take up any more of your Sunday. But no, thank you very much for coming on and being so candid, and man, some awesome stories out there.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem.
Fuck. Actually, what would be your number one memory from your career?
Oh man, I don't know. Like the one thing I always talk about was the hardest thing or the thing I missed the most is probably like the community or the camaraderie. Like that always I think of that the most is the thing I missed the most, and the thing that I had the most fun with was hanging out with everyone. It was the traveling during the weeks or on the weekends when we're all together and we're going somewhere and then we're riding somewhere together. I think that's probably the biggest memory I have of, the most positive thing was all the community and the camaraderie that, we had and we got to experience. That's probably like the one thing looking back on it, because there was so many cool trips and so many things, so many good memories, but like the one thing that I think I miss the most now was that community we had. So probably something like that.
What an answer, man. I completely agree with you because I would say the exact same thing. Like that's the best part of it. Like, you're doing cool shit and everybody's risking everything, like, but you're all doing it for fun anyway.
Yep.
You're doing it all together, and that's cool. Good answer.
Yeah.
Nice one.
Yeah. One good thing about doing the podcast is I understand this side so much better, and what it means to, to put some juicy stuff out there that the fans, I think, will really like.
Yeah, for sure. Man, you filled this one up full of juice. So that was fucking awesome. I'm genuinely impressed. I could probably keep going for another 2 hours, but I'd rather put that into a part 2, to be brutally honest.
Yeah.
There's so much more I know that's out there, and I'm sure you got so many more stories. So I'd love to have you back on again and go for round 2 as well.
I'd love to, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Like I said, I don't get to do these very often, and stoked that we got together and do this.
Thank you. No, it was awesome to have you. Thank you very much. And for everybody else, tune in to the Motocross. Oh, sorry, I did it again. The Moto X Show.
Yeah,
damn it.
That's all good.
I just want to thank Doug for coming on again and opening up so much about his life in and out of freestyle motocross. Make sure you check out the Riders Lounge Instagram and Facebook pages, because Doug has already sent me some footage of him jumping that huge jump at Manny's place from Global Addiction. And as a matter of fact, just go and watch the movie. You'll find it somewhere. I've seen it on Amazon. Just go find Global Addiction. It's from 2002. But either way, I'll be putting up plenty of old FMX content from Doug over the years, and I'll actually try and get some more photos and videos of the projects he's been involved in and put them up as well. Hopefully I won't be hit with any copyright problems. It should be fine. If you like what you've heard here and seen on the social media channels, it's all for free, and it'd be absolutely awesome if you could follow and subscribe to it all. Also, just tell your friends, let them know it's free. Share it with everyone. Get the word out there. And one of the main reasons I'm even able to do this is with the awesome support from the show sponsors, with the German brewing giant Rothaus coming on board and believing in this cause. So thank you to them and their Tannenzäpfler range of beers, which I can personally tell you taste bloody amazing. The full-bodied beer and also the full-bodied alcohol-free beer are just what I needed to put this episode together on a piping hot summer's day here in Germany. And it probably sounds a little bit funny to say that, but the houses here in Germany aren't designed for hot weather at all, so my home studio feels more like a sauna, and there's nothing better than a cold Tannenzäpfler as I put these episodes together. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Riders Lounge podcast.